Nightcrawler. Good to see you one and all. Thank you for tuning in tonight. Really appreciate you being here. Got some tales of terror to regale you with tonight, and I hope you are ready for that. So double check your locks, turn on all the lights, and make sure that you are safe because tonight I intend to unsettle you. I hope to make you uneasy. I hope that these stories keep you up just a little bit late tonight. So, before we get started, let me say I did post three new short videos this week. For those of you who are not aware, a new one went up today regarding a new cryptid that was recently sighted in the Ohio area. So if you haven't had a chance to watch that one, definitely check it out. It is up and ready for your viewing pleasure. Let me see, what else do we talk about this week? Well, that's neither here nor there. That is neither here nor there. So I'm going to give it about another minute, let these notifications go out. You know what? I don't want to start the story and get people halfway through. You know how it is. Nobody wants to come in halfway through a story. That's why I'm going to start with a short one. I like to start with short ones so, people get a chance.
You are go for departure.
The story, you know what I mean? And that's what happens. Let's see. Okay. So I'm just getting all my ducks in a row here, people. Okay, we look like we're okay. Yeah, it looks like we're doing good here, doing well. So anyway, folks, if you could hit that thumbs up button on your way in, I really would appreciate that. And hey, if you're on social media and you don't mind, share this out. Just share it out. Tell some people about it. It really helps me out. You don't understand how much it helps me out. Essentially, and like this is kind of something I was saying last night. Creepy Little Book is starting over again. So it's a brand new day. I look back at it, and it looks like in 2019 I only posted 2 short videos. 2 videos. That's it. And High Strange has carried this channel for well over a year. And I'm thankful for that. But it's back to work. And I'm putting the work in, and it's, like I said, it's at the beginning. I'm looking at my numbers. I'm getting viewership that is very comparable to the viewership I got when I started almost 6 years ago. So I put up a video, I'm getting the same amount of views as I would have 6 years ago when I first started with 0 subscribers. So it's a rebuilding phase. We are in a rebuilding phase, and I'm glad you're here for it. I really do appreciate you sticking with me, even though the show's changed a little bit. For those of you who like high strangeness and you really appreciate that kind of content, I don't want you to think that's going away. Saturday nights, I will be doing a live stream much earlier. It will be at 9 p.m. And what I intend on doing is bringing you interviews. But in lieu of an interview this week, I'll be doing a solo show. I'm going to pick a topic. I'm going to do this like I used to do back in the day when I would do a 9 o'clock at night stream. I'd pick a topic, we'd talk about it, nice interaction between myself and the chat, then really dig down into something and, theory craft with each other what we're talking about. But, I think I've ran my mouth enough. You're here for the spookies, so we'll get into that now. I just want to double check the time. So yeah, been at this about 4 minutes. I think people will get the notifications if they're going to get the notification. So I'm going to start with our first story of the evening. It's called The Collector, written by Thomas Anthony Lay. The next time you are sick, ill, weak, your mind is foggy and your bed feels like the only place you can be, beware the collector. It comes in the dark, in the silence. It comes for the decrepit, the unsound of mind, and the weak of body. I've seen it. I know what it wants, and it won't stop coming for me until I won't get better now. If you become aware of its presence, don't look at it. If you see the collector, it will collect. As I sit here scrolling these notes, I can feel its claws on my ribs, its breath on my neck. I know it's watching me. It's summer and this room is cold. The light is out. A maintenance guy should fix it tomorrow, but the sun will fall soon and tomorrow is too late. I hope someone will read these notes and heed the warnings. Don't look at it. It all started 2 days ago when I came down with the flu. It was a pretty serious case. My mother even got a doctor to see me as I could barely stand. I still can't stand. Only now, I'm in the hospital. I'm using all of my energy writing this. It started out as one would expect. Blocked nose, horrendous cough, shivering, the usual flu symptoms. That night was the first night I saw it. The collector. As I was tossing and turning in my bed, walking the line between uncontrollable sweats and chilling shivers, swallowing medicines that tried to soothe my throat and blowing mucus from my bunged up sinuses, I noticed something. There, in the darkest corner of my room, in front of my closed door, I saw 2 orange dots. My vision was blurred due to watery eyes, and I figured they were a reflection of something. I don't even know what I thought, but I didn't really pay much mind to them until they blinked. I'll be honest, that's the part that got my attention. I sat up in bed and squinted into the darkness, looking up near the ceiling at these 2 tiny orbs just floating there, occasionally blinking.
Scan detected.
My eyes struggled to adjust, so I guess the thing decided to make it easier for me. The eyes grew larger and I heard shuffling. It took me a moment to realize, but whatever I saw actually stepped forward. Only then could I see the outline of the figure that stood in my room. Its swollen, bald head was brushing the ceiling, with its spindly arms dangled by its knees, extended by long, sharp nails and giant hands. I froze, just lay there staring. All I could see was a tall, skinny outline and luminous amber eyes. Pouch. His left hand clutched some kind of bag. Still unable to fully process the terror, I reached over and flipped the switch on my lamp. That was the moment the horror broke my heart. The bulb flicked on and immediately popped. The instantaneous flash of light was all my eyes needed to see the figure stood in front of me was real. I saw its sharp teeth, lipped its mouth, snarling, hungry for me. There was no nose on its pale face, barely any features of its whole body, actually. But the worst part was the bag. It was a large pouch, dragging along the floor, and at first I thought it was made of leather. There's only the thought of the truth. I tried my best to scream that. My throat was clamped up in the bag. I lurched forward, calm and slow. Again, I tried to make some kind of noise to attract my mom's attention. I don't know what happened next. But I flailed and knocked the lamp off my bedside table. As it crashed to the floor, the reassuring sound of my mother's footsteps rushing up the stairs calmed me so much. She threw my door open and watched me in the darkness for a while. The entity didn't move. It stood staring at me, so I pointed at it, trembling. My mother flicked the main light on and it was gone. She told me she saw nothing. When I explained what had happened, she reassured me it was just a hallucination due to my high fever. Perhaps she was right, but I could tell my symptoms scared me. It was that night she called the doctor. The doctor diagnosed me with avian flu and said I should be hospitalized. Abject, I hate hospitals. She let me off this time and told my mother that if I hallucinated again, I would have to go in. I reluctantly agreed. When the doctor left, I asked my mom to leave the room. I leave the lights on, and the door open as I slept. Somehow I sank into a restless sleep that night, luckily undisturbed. When I woke, I felt like an absolute train wreck. Many times worse than the previous night, to the point that I was calling out pain. This was enough for Mother to drive me to the hospital. I remember falling in and out of consciousness and being wrapped in a lot of blankets to control my shiver. I don't remember much else between the car ride and the hospital. Yesterday, I spent the day being hooked up to various machines and monitor. I couldn't shake the image of the previous night from my head, though, so I decided to do some research on my tablet. Luckily, the room I was in had strong Wi-Fi, so browsing was not a problem. I typed in term after term and found nothing for at least an hour. Then I hit it. I searched for the leather pouch and glowing eyes description. Buried away several pages from the front, I found an assortment of articles about the collector. I read them. Every account matched what I saw. The more I read, the more my heart pounded. The intermittent beeps of the heart monitor beside me grew closer together as the adrenaline coursed through my body. A nurse popped her head around the corner to check on me and noticed my heart rate was elevated. She ran a few quick tests and advised me not to read scary stories. She smiled sweetly and left again after a few tests and questions. And as she closed the door, I continued to read. I'll paraphrase what I've read. My memory isn't so great, so I may miss something. There was a strange phenomenon among people who succumbed to illness and disease. The final scrawlings of these people describe a single entity. It is odd that the same being appears in many texts and writings described in almost the same way. However, we can assume it is the result of a form of mutual hallucination due to sickness. The creature in question is described as being inhumanly tall, unreasonably skinny, with long limbs. It has a swollen head, hands and feet, and its fingernails are long and sharp. A small portion of people describe the entity as having glowing orange eyes and sharp teeth but no nose. It is noted to carry a large bag allegedly made of human skin, although the contents of the bag are disputed. Some write that it contains the treasures of the sick, Some say it contains organs, bones, or extremities such as ears, noses, and fingers. It is for this reason the entity has been dubbed the Collector. Perhaps the most intriguing part of this phenomenon is that in every case, the deceased responsible for the writings are said to have some part of their body, whether internal or external, and belongings missing. Their faces are usually twisted in horror when their bodies are discovered. This detail is unexplained as of yet. And that's as best as I remember. The last sentence shook me. I know it was a crummy article buried deep on the internet somewhere with no citation, but still, it described what I saw. So I dug some more. I knew its name now. The Collector. And so I searched. My next finding came later at night, just as the sun was setting. I found an old, dead forum where people discuss ghost sightings and the like, and I found a buried thread aptly titled Orange Eyes Large Bag. I opened the link and I regret that decision. I found posts describing the Collector, but I also found more. One user in particular posted, "Don't look at it." Another user echoed the same sentiment, and a third user elaborated, "If you see it, it won't stop coming for you. Only the sick can see it, and once it's been sighted, the sick cannot recover. If you've seen the Collector, your time is up." The worst part of these posts is that the profiles of the users that all claim to have seen it all stated that they haven't been online since the day they posted. Enough reading. Last night I lay bunged up and constantly coughing. I had one eye on the door, but the trickle of light creeping through the gap at the bottom did little to reassure me. My eyes were fixated, but also heavy. I was drifting off, and I swear I only closed my eyes for a second, but when I opened them I saw the orange orbs again. The temperature dropped, or at least it felt like it. My stupid quivering hands fumbled for the panic button, but I couldn't find it. I looked around frantically as the Collector shuffled forward. There, on the floor, I leaned over and stretched for the button as the Collector reached for me. Just as I grabbed the button, his razor-sharp fingernails dug into my wrist and pulled me away from it. I'm thankful for the heart rate monitor because the terror that gripped my soul last night alerted the nurses nearby. The alarm to my room began sounding, but the Collector remained undeterred. It picked me up by my wrist like a rag doll, and an intense burning pain emanated from where it gripped me as I screamed in agony. I was dropped onto the floor and the door was swung open. The nurse turned on the light and powered my room down. Luckily, she had a torch on. She held me up from the floor and examined my wrist. Broken. She assumed I had fallen out of bed and landed on it. But I pointed to the Collector, who stood in the corner. She looked and saw nothing. Then it sank into the wall, disappearing. I needed an X-ray now. The nurse couldn't explain the gouges on my wrist or how I'd fallen out of bed with the side guards up, but the thing that confused her and the other doctors the most was the missing bone in my wrist. I mean, it was a mess, completely shattered. Luckily, it was my right hand, so I'm still able to write, obviously. But despite that mess, they could plainly see one of the bones was nowhere in sight. They shrugged it off as a birth defect that had gone unnoticed. I knew differently. So now I'm here. No light. No heart rate monitor. Today is Sunday, so the maintenance guy won't be able to fix the electricity here until tomorrow, as I'm not a high-priority patient. The sun has gone down. I'm lying here in my deathbed.
We're all clear,
I
Commander.
know tonight is the night he'll kill me, because there's no way for me to call for help. The room is cold, but it's not lonely. Here in the dark, it's just me. And the Collector.
Cargo scoop deployed.
Pretty good to start off with. Pretty good way to start. The Collector by Thomas Anthony Lay. Thomas Anthony Lay is the author of The Collector. And it's definitely a pretty good story. Bag of skins and pieces. The Collector. Very good. And it's a, it's a fear we all have. Nobody wants to be sick. Nobody wants to be sick. But, you know, these things, they aren't real, right? They're not true, are they? Or is everything true? We tell ourselves these things are true. Who knows? Who knows in the world of possibilities what kind of encounters people are having out there? These could be the product of a fanciful imagination, or in some cases, especially with the anonymous ones, I wonder. see what else I got. I throw in another short. I do like to start with the short ones. Like I said, gives people a chance to catch up. You know, if they got here a little late and missed the first story, it's okay. It's all right. You can always go back and listen to it later. We're going to be a pause here. Talk a little bit. Say hello to the chat. Hey Pete, if you saw the collector, would you fight him? I'll tell you what. I'd stock up on you know, all the necessity accoutrements to go up against some kind of creature like that. You know, you'd have to get a whole pleasure chest of blessed relics, holy water, salt. You know, maybe even banishing rituals, cleansing rituals, sage. Who knows? Who knows if you could even fight off something like this? This could be some kind of one of the endless, as far as we know. You know, one of these beings that are beyond
cargo scoop retracted.
Kind of gods. I think of it. I don't know if you've ever read The Sandman. It's on audiobook now on Audible. But in Sandman, the characters are called the Endless, I believe. And they're anthropomorphized concepts like lust and delirium and dream and destiny. You know, but these things are bigger than gods, you know, at least in the context of the story. And I think that to some extent, we could look at something like an anthropomorphized concept like destiny or dreams or delirium or desire as being a force all their own. But that's how we like it around here. We like to keep it creepy. So the next story is called Monster Hunting and Other Inadvisable Behavior by P.F. McGrail. 3:30 p.m., 1st of September. One three-person party entered the Rio Grande National Forest in Hinsdale County, Colorado. Consisted of Trevor Nelson, 37 years old, and Matilda Nelson, 33 years old, a married couple. Benny Nelson, 8 years old, their only son. 5:31 p.m., 1st September. Trevor and Matilda, highly distraught, the Forest Service Ranger reported their son missing. They could offer no details beyond return around. Matilda experienced a panic attack shortly thereafter and had to be treated on site with 20 milligrams benzodiazepine.
Diverting power to systems.
5:33 p.m., 1st of September. U.S. Department of the Interior Bureau uncategorized Du Bois was contacted. 5:46 p.m., 1st September. CH-47 Chinook helicopter landed 13 miles south-southeast of Lake City, Colorado. Trevor and impaired Matilda were presented to the Bois agents for interrogation. September 5:47 p.m., 1st September. Based on the information presented, the Bois agents confirmed cryptic contact. That's where I am. Did you know that Hinsdale, Colorado is the most isolated place in the lower 48? There are fewer roads per capita and longer distances between them than any others. Have you ever wondered how people felt upon discovering that the monsters were real? The British Museum assumed in 1799 that the platypus specimen before them was an obvious joke. Nordic seafarers feared the terrible kraken, leading us to laugh at their primordial beliefs before considering the subsequent modern discovery of the colossal squid. None of this mattered to Trevor, who kept chewing on his hair, and Matilda, who was staring placidly at some nearby leaves. We've established the last contact with Benny was at 37.887 degrees north latitude, 107.214 degrees west longitude, 3:33 p.m. What more can you tell me about the departure? I asked him. Who are you? Matilda responded in a very sort of way. That's not important right now. I should know that. I need to know the circumstances surrounding your son's departure. Trevor looked at me with bloodshot eyes and departure. You keep saying that word. How do you know so many specifics? Delayed speech, increased breathing, indicating early and warning signs of shock. I regarded him stoically. The sun will set at 7:29 p.m. tonight. Overnight temperatures can drop as low as 59 degrees, which presents potentially extreme danger to exposed aviary. The public is unaware of wildlife that has been documented in Rio Grande National Forest. Each minute spent conversing about mundane nonsense is a minute of daylight wasted. Now tell me, did your son have any food? Trevor stared back at the broken feet, his eyes rimmed with tears, just gummy bears. I grabbed from my radio. Get that Chinook ready to fly now! Matilda spun her head towards me as I was prepared to run. Who are you? Call me Lisa, I shouted. Get the fuck out of my way. Chopper landed Chopper landed me as close to the coordinates as humanly possible. I had to jump the last 6 feet straight onto the ground. The crew flew away immediately afterwards. We couldn't afford the risk of scaring them. Besides, I don't need the pain. All necessary equipment has been packed out. I found the family's trail on this instant. There were a path of broken twigs, scattered dirt, and even discarded trail mix wrapper. I followed the marks continuously, scanning every inch. It didn't take me long to find it. A natural rise in the grass had snaked its way toward the path that I'd been traversing. I hadn't been looking for it exquisitely well. I might have stepped right on it. I listened. The birds were quiet. The crepiest looked like animals were stirring. I tried to sound the elevated heart rate and such go down. I looked across the rolling landscape towards the setting sun. It really was beautiful. Root beer floats were inspired by colors and sunsets. I thought as fact. It had a minor effect. I reached slowly in my pocket and instantly thankful I packed everything I would need. I extracted said equipment and looked down at my trembling hand. Gummy bears, only red ones. For the love of God, definitely inconvenience. I tossed a handful into the artificial rise in the grass. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the rise coiled around the candy, coiling the limb like a snake and contracted. I didn't realize how frozen I'd become until my head swam from lack of oxygen. Then I sprang into action, moving my legs to follow the retreating rise in the ground. It disappeared into a corp of trees, then vanished from sight. I stared at the plants before me. No, not plants. At least not all of them. Broken fur rose in vertical lines along the edges of the trees. The brownish hue blended in well with the bark. I wasn't fooled. I stared up at the point where the fur stopped. It was towering, at least 7 feet above the ground, much higher than my 5'2" frame. I listened. It breathed. Look, I offered shakily, pulling out a fistful of red gummy bears. There's plenty more. I dropped them from a trembling hand on the ground at my feet. There was a snort. Then a large head emerged from the shadows. It was covered in thick, soft brown fur. Its 2 eyes, both 5 inches across, were jet black. 2 tiny triangular ears sat atop its skull. There was no visible nose, and its razor-sharp canines would have presented an imposing threat if it weren't for the fact they were misaligned in a massive, crooked underbite. It asked. Then it reached out a massive paw, clearly focused on the gummy bears. Whoa, I shouted, trying to look more intimidating than I felt. I stepped protectively over the candy. He snatched his paw back like I burned it. His eyes glistened as his lower lip began to tremble and drool. No, I yelled, pressing my advantage. Give me the boy. I stepped forward, causing him to flinch and raise his paw in a protective stance. It was almost funny. This bipedal monster was defending himself from someone 1/10 its size, but I suppose to him the term monster would be entirely relative. Give him to me, I screamed again, and he scurried into the bushes. Cautiously, I followed. He hadn't gone far. I could see his brown fur trembling in the dark. I leaned in. Benny Nelson, 8 years old, lay sleeping in the fetal position. A furry arm rested on top of him. I slowly reached for the bag of gummy bears. More slowly still, I raised them up in front of me. I pointed to the boy, and he understood. Benny woke up as the monster handed him to me. He began to panic. Shh, I offered as I completed the solemn exchange. I grabbed Benny tight as the giant paws rolled him into my arms. He looked around wildly. I grabbed a bottle of water, opened it, and practically forced it down his throat. After a moment of panic, he began to drink like a baby finding its bottle. A few feet away, I heard the distinct sounds of the monster devouring candy. Benny finished the water, rolled out of my arms, and looked up at me. Who are you? He asked incredulously. For the first time, I smiled. Lisa McMurray of Du Bois. You know, you're just like your mother. He looked at me in confusion. Are you an angel? No, not at all, I explained. I work for the U.S. government. He seemed to understand. I searched for cryptids, I elaborated. They're what you would call monsters. After spending nearly all of human history hiding in the shadows, they've run out of places to go. Cryptids are terrified of humans, and rightly so. They've been relegated to the status of legend. Unfortunately, their natural habitat is essentially eradicated. Their only hopes of survival is within the government's environmental niche replication program, which is basically a classified government zoo. We're currently maintaining a breeding program for several wild monsters. The one that you found for us, here, I pointed to the grunts coming from the bushes, loves your gummy bears. It's why it took you from your parents. He looked in confusion at the enormous, fuzzy, brown rear end pointing out of the leaves. Is he dangerous? For the first time, I laughed. Oh, no. He's essentially a giant puppy hamster. He's strong enough to rip a truck apart, but doesn't understand how to hurt things. That's why it's so dangerous for him to be around humans who specialize in hurt. Slurping, smacking noises that came from the shadows began to slow its pace. I placed Benny on the ground. He remained in a sitting position, grabbing his head as though in confusion. So there's a secret government plot to capture monsters? Cryptids, I corrected. Yes, the one you just met is eating red gummy bears, but I've been prepared with a heavy sedative. He should be ready any minute. Right on cue, there was a loud thump. Benny and I both looked up to find the monster collapsed just feet in front of us. He was now snoring quietly. The overwhelmed shock of the situation was keeping Benny subdued, so he continued, "Look, why would you tell me all of this?" I smiled sadly at him. "Because the water you just drank was laced as well. You'll be out in less than a minute, and you won't remember a single thing about what we discussed when you were reunited with your parents." I think he was trying to get me an angry look. It was just impossible with his eyelids fluttering so much. His head lolled once, twice, 3 times before finally coming to rest on his shoulder. I gently grabbed him and helped him lie on the ground. He pushed me away at first, but I eventually settled on sucking his thumb instead. I stood up and looked down at the 2 sleepy creatures. Mission fucking accomplished. I whipped out my radio. "I need an extraction team ASAP. The primary target has been found near the coordinates of deposit. Equip the Chinook to carry 1 small/mid-class cryptid and alert Cheyenne Mountain Complex. We have a package for delivery. This is important. I'll need 1 large bag of red gummy bears." I looked down at the boy. He had snuggled up to the monster and was now acting as the little spoon or as the teddy bear, depending on your point of view. I sighed, and I spoke in the radio once more. "Tell Cheyenne that we better make it 2 large bags of gummy bears." I signed off and stepped out of the shadows. It was 7:29 p.m. The sun was saying goodnight. It really was beautiful, I decided. Like all the world was a root beer float. So there we go. That's another good one. Not what I was expecting. Gomer Khan for $5. Thank you, Gomer Khan. We got a ghost, a shock face, an alien, a skull, and the metal sign. Thank you very much. I do appreciate that, Gomer Khan. That's very nice of you. That's pretty good. Pretty good stuff. I like that one. What else do we got here? What's this here? Okay. So we got a couple of the short ones out of the way, and that's always fun. I like to start with the short ones before we get into anything longer. That way I can kind of judge where we're at, you know. Judge how far along we're getting here. Let me see. Let me get back to the chat here. How would you like to have that job hunting monsters? Asked Zach. Zach, I tell you what, I think that would be a pretty good job. You know, I don't know. I think of that show, Supernatural. They hunt monsters. I mean, I've watched like 9 seasons of it, and that's what they do. And it's an entertaining concept. I like that idea, you know, and the idea of like paranormal detectives, like, you know, or supernatural detectives, you know, in fiction. It always intrigued me. I think it's pretty good stuff. Mage Grey Wolf, you can probably expect a story from me in your email sometime tomorrow. That's awesome, Mage Grey Wolf. Looking forward to it. I'll definitely read it on here. Sounds good to me. I'm excited. Definitely excited. I'm glad you wrote something. You know, and if any of you are interested in writing anything, definitely consider doing so.
Request approved. Cleared for landing.
Definitely consider doing so.
03.
So yeah. Not bad.
This is flight control. Reduce speed to 100.
Okay. What else do we have tonight? Jeff McClure, Peach, doing an album that consists of short stories. I'll tell you what, if I had enough people submit short stories to me, then I could see releasing something like that, you know. I could get maybe 7 to 10 short stories and narrate them all and, you know, put them together. Maybe, how's that, you know, Spotify or something like that. Where I have movies. But I could see something like that. Carries, the Nightcrawler stories are too scary for me.
Flight crew dispatched. It's good to have you with us, Commander.
Okay, so let's see here. What else we got? What other stories do we have here? The Song and Dance Man. Written by Dylan Charles. There are few left alive who remember the Song and Dance Man. Time has claimed the ones that survived the long night, and I'm sure they went willingly to meet their makers. Life takes on a strange tint after a night like that. The ones still left, Bill Parker, Sarah Carter, and Sam Tannen, didn't talk about it. Sam is lucky. His brain started to turn to porridge a few years back. Now he has trouble figuring out how to put on his pants. He got an earlier reprieve from his memories. He doesn't wake up night after night, the music still playing in his ears with tears still drying on his cheeks. The Song and Dance Man came to Bella Carne with a little fanfare in the fall of 1956. I had just gotten out of high school and was working as a stock boy at Handy's Hardware. I was there the afternoon that Sarah Carter burst through the door, making the bell over the door jingle like mad. George, you got to see what's been set up by the bandstand. There's a huge tent up there, and this man standing in front of it, yelling like a carnival barker. Sarah was out of breath and had obviously run from the park and all the way down Main Street. Her hair was whipsawed every which way, and one strand stuck to the end of her nose. She gave a quick puff and blew it out of the way, waiting for me to react. With Sarah, I was always 2 steps behind and running to catch up. The girl had energy in those days and an unlimited supply. I stopped rearranging the nails and said there wasn't anything up there, and I walked by this morning. When did it go up? She shrugged her shoulders. A quick rise and drop. I don't know, but it's up. You got to see this guy. He's all dressed up head to toe, and he can talk. Boy, can he talk. I thought about it, and I checked the clock. It was near about 5, and time for me to quit anyway. All right, let's go check it out then. Sarah grinned from ear to ear and was gone. I didn't doubt she was telling everyone in the gang, the ones who were still in town anyway. Most of us scattered to the 4 winds after graduation. Only a handful of us remained in town, and only a handful of us were on hand to witness the dance. I walked down to the bandstand myself, not bothering to wait for the others. Most likely Sarah was already there waiting for us. I met up with Bill as I passed the drugstore where he worked as a soda jerk. What the hell is Sarah talking about, George? She blew in here and then blew out again before I could ask her anything. Bill was a big guy. The tallest and heaviest guy in our class, and I just about cracked up the first time I saw him wearing that little peaked paper cap McCleary makes the soda jerks wear. Bill doesn't really like to be laughed at, though, and after the knot under my eye went down, I made sure not to laugh at him anymore. He's a good guy aside from that temper. He was the best guy on the high school basketball team, too, though he's one of the few guys who got kicked out of the game. He threw another player halfway down the court, and they were on the same team, too. Bill said the other guy elbowed him in the gut. It had to have been an accident. No one would have done it on purpose. We both walked down the street, Bill smoking a cigarette, a habit that caught up to him in 1995 when they removed his right lung. At the end of Main Street, we crossed Buchanan and entered the park. Normally, at this point, we would have been able to see the bandstand perched on a hill near the center of the park. During the summer, there'd be concerts, performances by local school marching bands, a church choir singing some hymns, that kind of thing. Once, a couple of kids from the high school had put together a pretty good rockabilly group, but someone on the parks committee passed an ordinance that banned rock and roll in the park. Small towns, you know. But now there was a huge faded yellow tent blocking the bandstand, like the kind in the circus, or the kinds those old revival ministers like to use when they're feeling the spirit and they like to feel your wallet, too. There was already a pretty large crowd around the tent as Bill and I got closer. We could hear the fellow that Sarah told us about. He sounded like a carnival bark, all right. Bill and I walked faster down the path that led to the tent. We pushed our way through the crowd up towards the tent where we thought the band was. Come on, everybody, it's getting close, getting close. We're going to have ourselves a heck of a time tonight. Yes, indeed, a heck of a time. We'll be singing, we'll be dancing, I promise you that. And the Song and Dance Man always keeps his promises. We still couldn't see him. Still too many people were blocking the way. It looked like the whole town had shown up to see the Song and Dance Man. Bill tugged on my sleeve and pointed. I followed his finger and got bug-eyed. It was Reverend Harper, the Baptist minister. I've lived a good long time, but I ain't never seen a man that could thump a Bible harder than he. Harper preached against the evils of sin, sin in drinking, sin in smoking reefer, sin in smoking tobacco, sin in lying, and most of all, sin in dancing. Yet here he was, lined up to get inside that tent too, because he certainly wasn't preaching. We waved at him, Bill waving with the hand that held the cigarette, and that old Baptist turned as red as the Red Sea and turned and walked away. Bill and I grinned at each other and kept on walking to the front and towards the song and dance man. Finally, we broke through the crowd, and there he was. He stood in an old crate, splintered and looking like he was on the verge of collapsing under his feet. On the grass beside him lay a black fiddle case with gold trim along its edges. It looked old, older than the crate, older than the town. It seemed like something ancient. He was all angles, all knees, elbows, and shoulders. He was tall and gangly, his body moving and bopping to the rhythm of his words. He wore a red and white pinstripe jacket, looking like he belonged in a barbershop quartet, a straw hat set on his head, always getting pushed back or pulled forward by his long-fingered hands, long, six-fingered hands. I stared when I saw that. I had read that some folks are born with 6 fingers, but reading something and seeing it are 2 different things. His eyes just about flashed blue lightning as he spoke, and sparks nearly flew from those white teeth, and he just never stopped talking. He didn't stop for breath, for questions, or anything. He just kept up that pattern like his very soul depended on it. All right, all right, all right. We're getting close, real close. We're getting close. Yes, we are. Are you ready to dance? Are you ready to sing? Because I'm ready to play my fiddle. Yes, I am. Yes, I am. I got a fiddle at my feet, and I'm ready to play. Ready to make those strings sing. Can you believe it? He'd clap his hands, and that's as close to a pause as he was willing to do. Sarah and Sam came up to us now, having found us in the crowd. Sarah elbowed me in the ribs and said, "What'd I tell you? It looks like there should be a carnival trying to get us in to see the bearded lady or something." Sam nodded in his head, greeting to us, which caused his glasses to slide down his nose, and he gave them a short push back up to where they belonged. He was as tall as Bill, but nowhere near as built. He was the smartest guy in our gang. You had to have someone like him around to tell you how to do things, like take apart the principal's car and rebuild it in the school gym. Not that we ever did anything like that. "What's he selling?" asked Sam. "A dance, I figure." "What's it cost?" The song and dance man must have heard him, because he said, "What does it cost, I hear you ask? Why, it doesn't cost $1, it doesn't cost a quarter, and it doesn't cost a dime. Folks, this will cost you nothing. Just get on in and dance to the song all night long." We all looked at each other. It was a good deal. A little free music and space to dance. There wasn't much to do in town back in those days, and there still isn't. This was almost too good to be true. The song and dance man stopped now, a minor miracle in and out of itself. He dug deep in his pockets, pulling out a gold watch, checked the time, and then grinned a grin that must have showed every one of his teeth. He pocketed the watch and said, "Folks, it's time for the dance. So come on in, everyone, because it's time for the dance to begin." And with that, he hopped down from his crate, grabbed it up with the fiddle, and darted through the tent flaps. Sarah, Bill, Sam, and I nearly got mowed over in the rush to get inside, but we were still the first ones in. We stopped short when we pushed aside those big old flap tents, but we were quickly driven inside. It was a huge mistake. There was a hardwood floor beneath our feet that looked like it must be oak, a dark oak polished to a mirror shine. There were candles and holders all along the tent pole post. When I looked up, I couldn't see the ceiling for all the darkness. It was like looking up at the starless night sky where the moon didn't dare show her face. The crowd just kept driving us, more and more people pouring in. It wasn't just the young people either. There was Mrs. Crenshaw, our junior English teacher, who was in her 50s. There was Mr. Hoskins, the principal. There was also the good old Reverend Harper, still looking embarrassed, but it was also like he couldn't help himself. It really was the whole damn town. Hell, even the mayor was there with his wife, standing and talking to the chief of police. Soon everyone was inside, and the murmur from all the talking was nearly deafening. It was already getting warm in there, and I was feeling cramped, claustrophobic. We were all looking for the song and dance man to see where he had gone. No one looked up, so no one saw him until the first pull of his fiddle bow. He was there on the center of the tent pole, sitting on a small wooden platform about 20 feet off the ground. God knows how he got up there, because there's certainly there wasn't any ladder going up. He dangled his feet over the edge and held his fiddle in one hand and the bow in the other. The fiddle and bow seemed to be made of the same dark wood that the floor was, and gleamed in the candlelight like a living thing. I almost doubted the fiddle even needed the song and dance man to make the strings hum. We all looked up at him and grinned and jumped to his feet, while the crowd gasped, worried he might plummet into their midst. And then he began to play. He made those strings sing. I haven't heard anyone play like that before or since, and I thank God for that every day. It made the air around us crackle and spark. It loosened the joints and jolted the mind. You felt an urge to move deep in the bone, buried in the marrow. I grabbed Sarah's hand and we began to move across the floor, and everyone followed suit, some with partners and some without. Some were doing the foxtrot, some were doing a waltz, and some of us were doing the twist. We danced, moved, shucked, jived, rocked, and rolled. I passed Reverend Harper moving his feet in a clunky box step with Eloise Grendel, an old battle axe of a Catholic. I saw the mayor's wife waltzing with Dan Adams, one of our firemen. I swirled with Sarah, moving across the floor, bumping and jostling with the people around us. It was hot and getting hotter in there, and it wasn't long before it smelled of sweat and bodies moving against bodies. I felt dizzy, but we kept dancing together, kept dancing and not stopping. It was a while before I realized the song and dance man was singing too, but in a language I didn't understand. He lorded over us standing on that platform, making his fiddle sing and sing. His bows rose and fell, slid back and forth, side to side. He played like he talked. There were no breaks or pauses, just a manic deluge of tones, while his tongue curled around words that had no business being said in this world. I gave my head a shake as I spun with Sarah and realized my legs were tired, my feet ached, and my lower back was beginning to throb. I checked my watch and realized we'd been dancing for a solid hour. I shook my head again, trying to shake off the dozy feeling that was clouding my thinking. Sarah! I cleared my throat. I had only spoken in a whisper. My tongue felt thick and funny. I tried again. Sarah, louder this time, but she still didn't respond, and we kept dancing. I shook her, but she didn't respond. I kept shaking her until I realized I was doing it in time with the music. So I just tried to stop, and I couldn't. I couldn't stop. Underneath the fog, I began to feel frightened. I began to see the faces of the other people now. I saw their terror. Reverend Harper's face had grown redder than it had ever been before. Sweat poured down his face, but he kept moving, twirling Mrs. Grendel around and around, her head lolling from side to side. She had fainted, but her feet were still moving. We moved past Bill, who danced with Susie Watkins, and I saw her frightened eyes darting around the room, but Bill bobbed his head in time with the music, and his glassy eyes looked at nothing in particular. The song and dance man laughed from his perch and kept playing, tapping his feet. His eyes were glowing in that dark, humid place. They glowed, and light glanced off the bow with each sweep. I heard a scream and swiveled my head to watch a woman drop to the floor holding her leg. She had cramped up. I was envious. She got to stop. She got to rest. My own legs felt like dead wood, and the ache in my back had deepened. Then her partner stepped on her ankle, and I heard the crunch from across the room. He was still dancing, his eyes blank and empty as he moved. She screamed again and started to crawl away, but instead stood up. She started to dance, bringing her weight down on the broken ankle again and again and again. I turned away, but I couldn't block the sound of her sobbing. The music ran on. I checked my watch again. It was 3 hours now. We didn't flag or falter. We kept up the same speed as the fiddle, the damning fiddle, wrapping our feet against the floor. Never mind the blisters that burst. Never mind the broken toes or broken ankles. Never mind the deep pain buried in the spine that refused to go. Never mind old hearts and bad knees. We kept up the frantic pace as one mass, a bobbing, thumping, jumping creature with one mind. Reverend Harper died at one point. I watched it happen. He was holding up the still fainted Mrs. Grendel, whose feet moved with the music. When he dropped her and fell to the floor, he twitched once, his feet beating a quick staccato rhythm, and then was still. Mrs. Grendel got back up and kept on moving. I watched Harper as I danced, trying to see if he was breathing. He wasn't. I swear to you, he wasn't. But he still got back up. He was dead, but he still got back up and began to dance again. He turned to look at me and grinned. The song and dance man's grin. His eyes were red, filled with the blood from whatever had broken in his brain. I watched as a single red tear rolled down his cheek. I shut my eyes and kept moving. Harper wasn't the last. He probably wasn't the first. The old and sick were first to drop, no matter what it was. Exhaustion, heart attacks, hemorrhages somewhere deep inside. They died, and then they got back up and kept dancing, grinning their grins. I passed Lizzie and Sam. He had lost his glasses at some point. His eyes darted around, terribly aware. I looked at his legs, and I saw a jut of some bone tearing through his denim jeans. There was a trail of blood behind him, and as he swirled, a spray landed on the legs of the people around him. He stepped on that broken leg, twirled on it, and jumped on it, all in time with the fiddle. The night passed. I remember stepping on something at one point and realized I had just crushed Mrs. Dempsey's right hand. She was lying on her back on the dance floor. She had been stepped on time and time again. I couldn't even see a man's shoe print on her stomach. Her head had been caved in, and her chest beneath her dress had a sunken look, and still she was trying to get up and keep moving. The smell of blood mixed with that of sweat, and I couldn't breathe anymore. The air was thick from all around. I could hear cries and screams, but nothing that drowned out the fiddle or the song and dance man singing, and then it stopped. I danced one more step, then stopped myself. I looked up at the platform. We all did, craning our necks upward. He was checking his pocket watch.
Fuel scoop disengaged.
All right, folks, that's all for tonight. The dancing is done and the morning has come. You may leave if you can walk, and you should walk quickly because the song and dance man is gonna be gone. We all stood there like stunned cattle, then marched to the tent flaps. No one ran because they couldn't. It was a miracle we could walk. Sarah stepped out ahead and left. but I stayed behind. I turned and looked, and saw at least 20 people still standing there. Harper was among them. They were all grinning, their eyes empty. They stood and made no sign of wanting to leave. Go on now, friend. The song and dance man has what he wants, but he'll be glad to add you too, if you tarry and dally too long. I looked up at him and saw him smile. Then I turned my back to him and left the tent. When I turned back again, it was gone, along with the people inside. That's the story of what happened. The others won't tell it, or they pretend it never happened. Never mind the 20 people that vanished that night, the mayor's wife included. They'd rather not think about it. Sarah and I took Sam to the hospital over the next Kennedy, far from folks that knew what had happened. They had to remove his leg. Sam was quiet before and was quieter still after, pulling odd jobs that one leg man could do. He doesn't move around much these days. He just sits on his porch, a cane across his lap, and massages the stump with his hand. He says it bothers him on cold nights, and warm nights, wet nights, and dry nights. Bill left to join the army and stayed in long enough to fight in Vietnam and won a bunch of medals. He came back and settled down to drink and drink hard. Now if you want to find him, you can find him in Eddie Dixon's bar. No matter how drunk he gets, though, he doesn't talk about that anymore. None of us saw much of Sarah after. She came through the best, but that's how she always was. She left and went to college, but like Bill, got pulled back to Bella Carne. She teaches over at the high school and teaches English like juniors. I stayed here, plugging away at the hardware store. I ran it for a while, but now I don't do much of anything. Just sit around with Sam, talking about things sometimes, though not often. If I stay too late, if I stay too long, if I see his eyes go glassy behind those Coke bottle lenses, and he'll disappear into himself, and I'll catch him humming a faint trace of a song, and the hair on my neck stands on end, and goosebumps rise on my arm in great knots. My foot will start to tap out a small beat on the hardwood porch. A big wide grin will spread across Sam's face. The grin of a song and dance man. I like that one. I like that one. It's pretty good. Ginger Viking Jesus for $2. Thank you, Ginger Viking Jesus. That's some demonic Pied Piper tier shit. Yeah, exactly. That's exactly what that was. You know, I think of, you know, it's like the devil comes to town playing his fiddle and lures the people away. You know, or some kind of demon. But that was one. He died for himself. Hell. Yeah. Preacher hitting that podium down with Satan. Down, bang, bang. Oh, yeah, definitely a different story. A rowdy dowdy. Tina, I peed a little. I don't think it was down in Georgia. They didn't specify where that one took place. There's no specification there. So, yeah. Yeah, things, tonight's going by quick. We're already 50 minutes in. Can you believe it? Can you believe it already? We're already 50 minutes in. Blasting through. Terrifying tales. So, how are you guys feeling about Nightcrawler? I mean, you guys digging it? I see you guys coming back night after night, so you must be digging it. But, you know, I think that's something to do.
Prep for arrival on landing pad 1-8.
And I'd love, like I said, I'd love to start doing stuff from the community here. So Made Grey Wolf, definitely. Send what you got. I'd love to read it. I think people will really enjoy that. Made Grey Wolf, I'm liking it. It's really inspiring. Good, very good. I'm really enjoying like a lot of these. I'm hearing for the first time when I'm reading them. You know, like I said, I skim them for subject matter because some stuff I find unsettling and like to read about. But I skim them quickly before I you know, read them here. And you know, so that way I don't know ahead of time. I get to find out what it is. I think it's good. It's a good time.
Landing gear deployed.
Nice to I bet you that fella from last night's story could have blown through in about 15 or 20 minutes. The slow guy? The guy whose brain was moving faster than his body? Yeah. That poor fella. Yeah, he He was definitely stuck. That was a crazy story. Definitely a wild one. Tina, halfway through some of these, I realize my mouth is hanging open. You know what? I'll tell you, that one from last night, what happens when the stars go out. I think that's what it's called. The one that was flashing back and forth between the then and the now was the last story of the evening. I don't know if you guys heard it. If you were here, you probably did. Loved that story. Really did. You know, I went back and reread it today because it was so good. So damn good. There are a lot of really creative people out there. You know. A lot of really creative people. And they're doing good stuff. You know. They're definitely doing stuff that's, you know, worth spreading around, worth hearing, worth getting into. Oh, cool. Oh, Ginger, you gotta go. Oh, mandatory fun. All right, well, Ginger, you have a good night. Try to take it easy. And if you're around tomorrow, we'll see. We'll see if you're here tomorrow. I don't know if you got work, but yeah, tomorrow's gonna be 9 p.m. Jeff McClure, last night was rough. Chaos, I haven't stopped thinking about that story. No, I woke up thinking about that story. Yeah.
Super train disengaged. Regulate your speed when exiting the docking.
It was really well done. And it pulled at the heartstrings too. You know, so you were dealing with I mean, you know, some of the best creepypasta. I think probably the best creepypasta ever. I don't know if you can top that story. I just don't feel like you can. Like, to me, that was the favorite. One of the favorite things I've ever come across. There was a series I read years ago on No Sleep called Bloodstains that was really good. And that was a good time. Well, Wally, well, after tonight, you know, after the show tonight, we'll be over on Jesse's channel hanging out. So, you know, definitely tune in over on Jesse's channel at the end of Nightcrawlers. And we'll be hanging out over there, you know, talking nonsense.
You are clear to plot
We'll
your
even
own
talk about
course.
toys
Enter
and
command.
cartoons, you know, stuff like that. You gotta find the one about Katniss.
3, 2,
Katniss. I have to say. Katniss with a C or a K? Yeah, I just get a lot of Hunger Games stuff when I look for that. Yeah, it's got a lot of Hunger Games stuff there. D. Will for $20. Thank you so much, D. Will. Very generous of you. Much appreciative. Interesting content, Pete. We really enjoyed it. Another late night in the lab. Houston, Texas Medical Center. Well, holy smokes. Thank you so much, D. Will. I'm glad to hear you guys are listening. He was down in the Houston, Texas Medical Center. Isn't that? Well, you never know where people will listen to you, don't you? Well, I hope you're having a good night, D. Will. And I hope you have a great weekend. I know it's Friday night, so maybe you're off this weekend. I don't know. I don't know how it works down there in the medical center. I don't know how long you're on a shift or how many tours you got to do before you're done. But I hope it's your Friday night too. You know, for me, Friday night meant a 30-pack of beer and a nice, delicious pizza pie. So I think after I'm done the show here, I'm going to crack myself a cold one, join Jesse on his stream, get back and relax, talk a little trash. Yeah. Well, thank you, D-Will. Do appreciate it, man. So, let's see what else we got. This one attracted my attention right away because it brought to mind the, well, you know what, you'll see. You'll see from the very beginning. It's called The Sounding of the Fifth Trumpet, written by Derek Hawk, a.k.a. Killahawk 1. You've been given a chance. One single opportunity, just for you, little one. You don't have to endure the tribulations about to be unleashed. You can escape all of that misery. All you have to do is listen to my voice. As before it begins to sing, a faint hum vibrates from the sky that tickles the back of your throat. The resonance builds to a thunderous, resounding blast of one of the 7 celestial trumpets. Each time that horrible sound is heard, it has heralded the start of another 3 years of suffering, each more horrifying than the next. 4 times has the trumpet sung its song. Before the echo of the 5th trumpet fades, you will be given your last chance to escape. When that familiar tickle reemerges, an object will appear in the sky. As it nears, the intensity of the deep tone grows. You know it is only a matter of time before the deafening blast is heard once more. However, this time, what is to come will be different. The past 4 soundings of a trumpet brought with it disasters never seen in such magnitude, yet you understood what they were. Yes, they were terrifying, but it was all within the realm of your understanding. You know what makes the earth roll and quake? You know why the fiery mountains fall from the heavens. Knowledge has freed you from the archaic beliefs in the supernatural. No longer does such nonsense deceive you into believing the displeasure of a god will call the hurricane, or curse will summon the cyclone, or a hex will bring down the plague upon you. It is something different that approaches from above. It is an abomination. It is wormwood. The Hebrews called him Abaddon, the banished, and the Greeks knew him as Apollyon, the destroyer. Life as you know it is now over, for he holds the key to the bottomless pit that has imprisoned his army even before the words, "Let there be light," were spoken. Do you remember the first time we spoke, little one? After the 2nd trumpet sounded. You were given a vision of the pools of Nakuna Sechida. If you were able to find the location of those sacred waters, go there now. 3 pools sit at the end of a T-shaped rock formation. As the moon peeks out from the horizon, its crimson light gives the waters the appearance of blood. The higher it rises in the sky, long shadows are cast. Upon the rock, the likeness and resemblance of a man outstretched upon the rocks will appear before you. Stand in the center of the 3 pools. Tread carefully, for you stand before the image of the sacrament laid upon his symbol. Each pool has a name. The pierced left hand, the pierced right hand, and the pierced foot. Prepare yourself to receive the blessings of the pierced abdomen. It requires you to be anointed with the ethereal spearhead that will now run through you. There is no outward wound, but the blood is now seeping internally into empty places within you. Your blood has now become the 4th pool of sacrifice. When you collapse from the pain, ensure that you fall into one of the pools of water. If you fall onto dry earth, you will have missed your only chance to enter the portal, and you will lose the anointment. As punishment, your wounds will be healed, but you will live the remainder of your days marked as was Cain, hunted by both angel and demon. If successful, you awake in a dark, candlelit stone building, lined with pews ending in a great altar. You stand upon the place of worship where the crossroads meet. Behind you are 3 mirrors, very similar in orientation to the pools of water you recently stood before. Shake off the chill from your wet body and make haste, little one. Time moves differently here, and we must move quickly. Look at the altar. Do you see it? There, in the shadows, a figure is kneeling in the distance, slowly and cautiously approaching. The creature is tall and hooded. It should be deep in prayer, whispering strange incantations. If it is not, do not come any closer. Only approach it if it is prayer. Do not interrupt. Any disruption will be considered a great offense, resulting in a painful death for you. Kneel in front of it. Bow your head. Do not make eye contact and wait. Be patient and make no mistake. It knows you are there, and once it has considered you and deemed you worthy, it will acknowledge your presence. However, if it decides you are not worthy, well, there really isn't anything much more that needs to be said, now is there? I will ask you. It will ask you. Why have you come before me? Quickly tell it I seek passage over the bridge. It will take its time before answering. You lack the knowledge to accomplish such a deed. Be brave, little one. Once these words depart your lips, there is no turning back. The creature towers above you. I seek the knowledge of the forbidden. I wish to know what is the image of God. It will slowly lift its head. Close your eyes, shut them tight. You will hear its body creaking like breaking branches of a tree. It leans close, taking your scent from the air. Its hand hovers and circles over you. The fingers glide in the air, following the shape and curves of your body, coming ever so close but never quite touching you. A deep, quivering exhale of breath escapes the creature's mouth and makes contact with your skin. It caresses your face with one hand as the other rises slowly to embrace your head from the nape of your neck. Its bony fingers envelop your entire head from behind. Even with your eyes closed and its mouth unseen, you can tell it is pleased with what it holds. You can tell it is smiling. It will grab you by the wrists and lift you off the ground. The ferocity of its grip is both sensual and violent. You're dangled helplessly above the ground as it brings you closer to the face hidden in the shadows underneath its dark and worn hood. Its breath coats your face with a prickly dust that stings your face. Droplets of saliva fall from its mouth and hit the ground as scabbed tongues emerge from underneath the hood. It slides and probes the entire surface of your face until it finds a particular interest in where your eyes rest. It is here where it wants to enter. A cold, lumpy tongue will start pushing and poking, squeezing and groping the top of each eyelid through your eyeballs, through your eyelids. You feel the shame and demoralization intensely from the molestation. Pressure builds in your head from the closed eyes as it continues to violate the frail organs that hide behind your thin lids. The scabs feel like hundreds of little fingers. Its fingernails quickly find where your eyelids meet and begin to scratch violently to pry them open. Shut your eyes tighter. The little fingers intensify their efforts to dig into your eyes with raw and obscene desperation. One of the scabby protrusions bursts, coating your face with a hot, sticky tar-like fluid that slightly burns. The putrid afterbirth from some abscess spills onto your tongue and continues to throb relentlessly on the surface of your closed eyes. Suddenly, the tongue withdraws and there's silence. Keep your eyes shut and wait. Eventually, you begin to make out a faint sound coming from the being. It is a cross between a moan and a hum. It is not quite a voice singing, as there is no melody to the song, but like melodic singing, there is a flow to the tones and variation to the intonation. Listen carefully, and the words will emerge for you to hear. It happened after the sons of Adam had multiplied in those days. The angels, the children of heaven, beheld them, and some became enamored with the image from whence he was created. They conspired amongst each other and said, "Come, let us select for ourselves from the progeny of men." And so, we were drawn unto them by insatiable hunger and thirst, a sensation unfamiliar to our kind. When we then swore all together and all bound ourselves by mutual excretions to abandon our holy station, we descended upon Ardis, which is the top of Mount Armon, and devoured all which the labor of men produced. To our delight, the fresh flesh of man cried out to us in return and embraced our new form. They loved us, and we came to love them. Never had such pleasures of skin, pleasures of sight, pleasures of the tongue, and pleasures of the mind been experienced by any living thing. Man was shown the wondrous transcendence of the grotesque and revealed to the vile decadence of purity. During our time together, we taught them sorcery and incantations. We gave them knowledge of the forging of metal and healing with herbs. We instructed them in the ways of architecture and mathematics. We revealed powers so great, it allowed them to command the atom from within the rocks of the mountains and from the waters of the sea. We freed their minds and released them from the enslavement of the Father. In turn, they worshipped us, and their love for us strengthened. They basked in our adoration, but it was not true love we bestowed. It was a deception. Our actions and deeds came with dire consequences. We had angered the Creator and desecrated his creation. Mad with rage, the Father plunged his hands into the fabric of reality and altered the delicate strands of fate and possibilities. With his divine manipulation, he altered the pattern and set into motion a new future and the predestined plan. We had been judged. We had condemned ourselves and humanity to an eternity of suffering and pain. Our bodies would be scorched and burned until the end of time in a lake of fire and brimstone. However, all was not lost. We had discovered the forbidden secret. Man. They were our true salvation. We prepared and molded them in our image, and when they were ready, we begot the Nephilim. It will lean closer and whisper into your ear ever so softly, "I shall grant thee thy request, for it is the seed to the holiest of lies, the very lie that brought forth original sin. A great harvest will come about from that seed, a seed that is the very fruit of the knowledge of good and evil. It is such forbidden knowledge that binds the Creator to the laws of his creation, a way to deceive the eyes of the one who is all-seeing and thwart the mind of one who is all-knowing. But be warned, For if I bestow this wisdom unto thee forever, will it restrain thee to my will? Behold, the answer thou seek is thou art not of the image. Then it stops. You are alone in the darkness. Slowly open your eyes. I know you are scared, little one, but it is safe now. Get to your feet. The great altar has split open and revealed an entrance that allows you to proceed onward. The pain in your side must be getting worse by now. I can see a protrusion the size of an apple has formed in your side. You don't have much time. Enter the altar and move on. You enter a large opening with a dark ravine separating you and a structure containing stairs leading up to what appears to be a temple. From the ravine grows thick black thorns that slightly sway, even though there is no wind. Their points glisten with a substance that can only be poison. Do not get too close. In the center of the ravine is a single pathway that jets up from the thicket of needles and thorns that will provide you to safe passage to walk upon. The pathway ends at the far end to the foot of the stairway of the temple. At the top of the stairs will be 4 thrones where the ones known as the 4 living creatures reign. They are covered with eyes in front and in back. They look down on you with unnerving, mischievous stare. The first living creature is that of a lion. The second is like an ox. The third will have the face of a man, and the fourth is like a great eagle. Each of the 4 living creatures will have 6 wings covered with eyes all around, even under its wings. At the foot of each creature, a body on its knees chanting continuously before him, Saudadha, Saudadhaya, Kavadua, Sarava, Para Akarma, Saravamyanya, Vara, Daivyanya, Vara Achara, Vana Achara. Their faces look up into the sky with their arms pulled and stretched outward by barbed shackles embedded in their flesh. The manacles stretch and contort their limbs to mimic the acts of eternal worship. The flesh is bleached and white and heavily scarred from head to toe. It wears a blood-red smock from its waist down to its feet and holds dirty curved blades in its hands. Branded on their backs is a rune that bears the resemblance of a cross with hooked ends. Consider yourselves fortunate they have their backs towards you, and their mutilated faces are obscured from your view. They are the Beish. Cautiously move past them. The Beish were 4 men, great kings and leaders of the world. They ruled vast lands that ran red with innocent blood from every man, woman, and child who had the misfortune of being born in their kingdom. The 4 kings were like grown children, spoiled and naked, fighting each other, biting and gnawing at the tits of their great Mother Earth, her face beaten and scratched from when they would feed so viciously. They knew only to gorge on her black milk that flowed from deep within her bosom. Their greed and decadence, their very existence offended all who could peer into your world. Their wicked lives were ended the day they were raptured and bound like statues within the walls of this great temple. They must now worship the 4 living creatures as they once commanded others to worship them in life. They suffer now as their kingdom suffered. For every son and daughter who found death from fighting the wars they created, their skin is blistered and torn, and their eyes are stung with the venom from the tails of 1,000 scorpions. But be warned, if they are awakened from their trance and given the use of their limbs once again, one can be well assured they will not be pleasant. In unison, the 4 creatures will hold up a key, each with a unique emblem on its end, and speak, choose, choose now, choose once, choose quickly. The first creature that looks like a lion will offer you its key and say, acquiesce. The ox will offer you its key and say, Leviathan. The third creature with the face like a man offer you its key and says, Clithridat. Lastly, the creature that is like an eagle will offer you the final key and say, Pshit Horim Isma. At last the key is presented. You hear a brittle crackling like autumn leaves from the movement of dead skin from behind you, followed by the loud clank of chains falling to the ground. Make your choice. Make it quickly. The Beish are beginning to stir. Once they see you, they will catch you and they will kill you. Make your choice. You will know which one to choose, I promise. Take the key and run. Run faster. Run faster. They are coming. Their howls are high-pitched gurgles and hisses. Their screeches build as they close the distance between you and them. The slices of their blades come closer and closer. The blood pouring out of your mouth and nose cannot slow you down. Run faster. Run faster. Do not stop until you reach the church of worship. Head straight for the dark glass you saw when you first awoke in the church. Do not slow down. Run headfirst into it. Crash into the mirror. Do not look back. Do not look back. Whatever you do, do not look back. You will awaken shortly. The pools of water are now dried up earth, cracked and barren. The moon should be its peak height in the sky, covering the land in its red glow. In the distance on the plain, You should see a piercing shimmer of light. It is only temporary as the world loses its red shade. The beacon, too, begins to diminish in darkness. I am sorry you're in so much pain, dearest little one. Pain is not asking. Your body has
Ship
something
detach
left.
complete. Access corridor is clear.
Fragile, but I must ask one last thing. One final plea, must I beg? You must reach that beacon of light in the distance before the last of the red moon shines down upon you. You will be trapped. I am here for you. Push aside all the pain and despair. Listen to my voice and use everything you have left and get to that light now. Abaddon is here. Even from miles away, his arrival knocks you off your feet. Get up, little one. There isn't much time. Abaddon is near, and his thoughts are of nothing but you. You see a brilliant beam of light shoot up into the sky. The source of this powerful beacon comes from an archway standing in an empty plain. Within the archway is a massive and majestic door standing in the emptiness. With the key in hand, you must get that door open before the red moon shines down upon it. No more. Any hope of saving you is lost forever. Ignore the wheezing sound you make when you breathe. Pull open that door. The blood from your mouth is everywhere, making it hard for you to get a grip on the door handle. Pull harder. You only need it to open enough for you to squeeze through. The light is almost gone. Pull, pull, pull. You did it. Get in and shut the door as fast as you can and lock it. The light is gone. It is done. Place your ear to sounds like a buzzing or fluttering. A sound that can only be made by the flapping of a million wings. There will be scraping, and there will be beating on the other side of that great door. Then only screams. Behind you is a long dark tunnel with the light leading. Walk into the light and claim you, my ward, my little one. Epilogue. I walked into the bright light. Slowly. My eyes adjusted to the brightness, but I could already feel a warm breeze on my face and hear it trickling from a nearby stream. Everything slowly comes into focus. The most beautiful valley spanned out in front of me. It was made of hills of green, sprinkled with every color imaginable, where the most beautiful flowers peppered the landscape. I walked towards a clearing and saw a crystal blue pond. I dipped my cupped hands into the water and drank. It soothed my chapped lips and parched throat. It was amazingly sweet. And there was an odd sensation as I swallowed the water. It was like a shock from a tiny bit of electricity, without any pain, only satisfaction. Then I caught the scent of something new and intoxicating. On the far side of the pond was a gathering of trees. I instantly knew that among these, there was one that is the source of all that unceasing smell. I knew there was no other like it. Its leaf, its flower, and its bark would never wither, and its red fruit would be so beautiful and delicious. As I approached the border of the foliage, that's when I saw them. A man and a woman. I froze. The couple was walking hand in hand. I think they're naked. I made my way closer, making sure to stay hidden behind a bush. I don't know why I was hiding from view. Why should I be afraid of a couple naked people? Yep, they were definitely naked. I looked around and realized that my tree was at the center of the grove that held this paradise. But next to my tree was another tree. It was just as majestic and impressive, but there was something ominous about it, something powerful. I looked carefully at these two unique and special trees that grew in this garden. I now realize what this place was and where I'm at. I'm startled when I feel something vibrate in my pocket. It was the key I chose. As I removed the large key from my pocket and opened my palm, I noticed the markings on its emblem in more detail. When it was offered to me by the winged creature, I simply thought it was marked with the infinity symbol. Upon looking closer, now I realize it was a serpent devouring its own tail in the shape of an infinity symbol. My mind was unlocked. It was also clear now. I knew my purpose. I knew why I was chosen. I knew why I was created. It was always God's will to destroy his creation. Once destroyed, he could fulfill his promise to bind his enemies and cast them into the lake of fire where they will suffer for all eternity. The trumpets were a countdown to his planned end. Those branded the enemy had spent their immortality trying to find a way to prevent it from happening. But how did you outsmart an omniscient and omnipresent being? You used the very laws of existence against him. For with the creation of the universe, laws had to be created. He had no choice but to subject himself to those laws for the universe to exist. The Fallen One realized the only way to prevent the end was to break the predestined, inevitable chain of events leading to the end. They must have figured out how to connect 2 points of existence, creating a bridge for me to enter. It caused everything to stop and reset back to the very beginning. Instead of continuing along the predestined path, it never ends. It never reaches Judgment Day. Existence was a loop. You are destined to keep repeating it over and over and over again to escape damnation. It was infinity, like the serpent devouring its tail. The serpent was thought to be Lucifer, God's adversary, but Lucifer was not a thing or an entity with thought or a consciousness. He was the infinity of time, the only thing capable of denying God's divine will. It was the one simple thing that is protecting us from the wrath of an angry God. I felt its familiar presence immediately. I don't turn around, but even if I did, I knew it would not harm me. It stood behind me for a while, quite quietly admiring its works. It gently placed a large and cold object in my hands before the fallen angel spoke the words that would be my final instructions. I looked down at the key, mesmerized by the shape of the serpent. It was so old and worn. The jewel that made up the serpent's eye twinkled in contrast to the bright red piece of fruit held in my other hand. I now understood. I had one more thing to do. I wondered how many times I have done this. How many times I have crossed the bridge and stood at this very spot. How many? Man was created in the image of God, but I am not of that image. I am the serpent. I am the Nephilim. Then the breath and faint whisper, now sweet and warm, was spoken into my ear. Just 5 simple words.
Crew dynamics,
Make them
Bravo
eat.
Alpha November. Welcome to Alliance Space Commander. Follow standard docking protocols during your visit.
Wow. Gotta say, I really appreciated that one. The sounding of the 5th trumpet by Derek Hawk, also known as Kilowhawk 1. The sounding of the 5th trumpet. Yes, that was excellent. Excellent. Jeff McClure for $2. Thank you, Jeff McClure. Tuesday and today are my favorites so far. Chills. Thank you, Jeff. Thank you so much. I'm glad you guys are enjoying this. I really am. Because I'm having a good time with this stuff. It really is great. I thought it was definitely a good one right there. Definitely a good one. You know? I was not expecting Nephilim when I started that one. And that's exactly what we got. Hey, more Kitty, how you doing? Yeah, that was pretty deep. Pretty deep stuff. Jesse Miller at the Crow's Nest. I'm going to shower, so please keep going. I need time. Well, Jesse, let me see how much time I got left here. You got about 10, 11, 12 minutes. You got 12 minutes, Jess. You got 12 minutes before I'm off the air. So, yeah, thanks, Tina. That was deep. That was a pretty deep one. I did enjoy that. I definitely enjoyed that one. Let's see. Do I have? I don't know if I have another short one here. Let me see. All right, Jess. You got 16 minutes. 16 minutes. This is the last one for the night. This might run a little over, but hey. 16 minutes, Jess. 16 minutes. This is going to run a little over. So let's make it 20, because I'll probably talk for a few minutes afterwards. So let's make it 20 minutes. 12:40. 12:40, everybody. Here's our final tale for the evening. Mr. Mischief's here. What's up, Mr. Mischief? How you been? Okay. All right, this one is titled Never Use a Voice Recorder While You Sleep, written by Christopher Maxim. I'm a chronic sleep talker. I always have been. Everyone who's ever slept in the same house as me will tell you that. My parents, siblings, friends, especially my exes. They're the ones who got an earful. It was something we laugh about in the morning, because most of what I'd say would be incoherent or nonsensical. Some of my famous lines include, there's too many helicopters in the pool, and my balloon is on the wrong foot. It never bothered anyone around me. My friends and family pretty much just got a kick out of it. One day at work, the subject of sleeping came up. My coworkers threw back and forth stories about some of their weirdest dreams. I chimed in with my sleep-talking antics. Everyone laughed as I rattled off some of the crazier shit I said while zonked. One of my coworkers, Bill, really busted a gut. After he finished hyperventilating, he told me I should set up a voice recorder while I sleep so I can play it back at work every morning. Honestly, I didn't think it was a bad idea. That night, I downloaded a decent voice recording app on my phone and placed it on my nightstand before I went to bed. Being single and living alone, I had no way of knowing what I said in my sleep anymore, so I was looking forward to hearing what would pick up. It would be a humorous way to start my otherwise dull mornings. For 2 months, I recorded a lot of great stuff. One night in particular, I kept screaming, almost as if I was running from something in my dreams. But after a few minutes, I said, "Bad fridge." I couldn't stop laughing at that one, neither could my coworkers when I showed them. Eventually, the app picked up something unsettling. Listening to the audio for any trace of funny banter I might find, I heard a loud bang. It sounded like a door being slammed with great force. Hearing that, my heart sank. I wondered if an intruder had made their way into my home. My house is a small cottage on the outskirts of town. I was able to get it at a great price due to its location and age. As such, some of its components are antiquated. I knew after hearing the recording that the only two doors sturdy enough to make that loud of a thud were that of the attic and of the basement. Basements and attics have always freaked me out. I never liked to go near them as a kid, and I still don't like them as an adult. They kind of terrify me. The ones in my house, even more so. Something about them being old made them all the more sinister. Despite my fear, I had to make sure no one was in the house. I got up out of bed and headed straight for the basement, as that was the door closest to my bedroom. I hesitantly opened the door and descended into my home's depths. I was nervous, but I was desperate for some peace of mind. The basement was empty. I quickly ran back up to the first floor and proceeded my journey upstairs. Once I reached the attic door, I froze. As much as basements make my skin crawl, I find attics to be far worse. Maybe because they're always a big unknown to me. I've only ever been in an attic once in my whole life, and that was to help my dad unload some Christmas decorations. Even then, I was spooked. Because of my phobia, I installed a deadbolt on the door when I moved in. It sounds foolish, but hey, it helps me sleep at night. Looking at the door, I noticed the deadbolt is still locked. An intruder could have gone in and then relocked it on their way out, but at least I knew they weren't in there anymore. This was my excuse not to go inside. I went back downstairs and put the noise out of my mind. Forgetting all about the loud bang, I continued to record at night in hopes of catching more sleep talking. I did, but it wasn't of the hilarious, absurd variety. The night after I recorded the noise, the only thing I said in the whole night was, "Where are you?" I didn't pay it any mind, as I've said similar things in my sleep before. It wasn't until I heard the following night's recording that I became alarmed. I said the same thing, "Where are you?" Only this time it was followed by a strange static sound. This was odd, but I chalked it up to coincidence and a phone malfunction. I quickly discovered that neither of these things were to blame. Every night, I got almost the exact same thing. I would ask, "Where are you?" And I get some sort of static interference. I couldn't explain it, and it left me rather frazzled. I showed my coworkers, but they weren't able to offer me any insight. I thought about not recording anymore, but not knowing would make me more uneasy. I wanted to get to the bottom of what was going on. And then one night, I caught something different. Listening to the audio intently, I heard two distinct things. During a 2-minute stretch in the recording, there were footsteps in the background, almost as if someone was pacing. It was very faint, but it was most certainly there. The second thing I heard was me asking the same question, "Where are you?" Only this time I received a response. It was a low whisper, but I couldn't make out what it said. "I'm upstairs." Deeply unnerved by my findings, I set the app up again next night. I took the liberty of setting up 2 digital cameras, one in my room and one facing the attic door. After adjusting the light settings on each, I felt confident in my approach. I didn't have time to deal with this bullshit, so I wanted nothing more than to get it sorted out somehow. Unfortunately for me, it just wasn't that simple. I slept through the night like normal, but I did have a weird dream. In my dream, I was at home. I was sitting on my couch watching TV when I heard a scratching sound coming from upstairs. Naturally, I assumed it was mice, but as I sat there, the noise grew louder and louder, and it morphed into this horrendous knocking sound. That's when I got up to investigate. I made my way to the attic door, and the noises ceased. I stood there for a moment, expecting it to start up again, but it didn't. Complete silence for what felt like a few minutes. Then, without warning, a loud clicking sound broke the tension. The deadbolt had unlocked itself, and that's when I woke up to the sound of my alarm going off. I immediately got up and gathered the cameras as well as my phone. I was eager to see if they captured anything. They did, but it only left me with more questions. Halfway through the audio on both my phone and camera in my room, I heard once again, "Where are you?" There was no response and no static, but there was a loud bang, just like the one I caught before, only more distinct. It was most certainly a door being slammed shut. I quickly grabbed the second camera and began looking through the footage. The attic door never opened. Instead, I heard the bang in the background, ever so faintly. Given the volume of each of the clips, it seemed as though it might have been the basement door. After skimming through the rest of the footage, I find nothing else out of the ordinary. I decided to check the basement again. With a mixture of nerves and adrenaline, I ran over to the basement door and swung it open. I hurried downstairs and turned the light on. I was fed up and a little annoyed, thinking someone was somehow having a laugh at my expense. However, when the room lit up, I was greeted with the familiar sight of an unfinished basement. It was completely empty, no intruder, and no answers. Frustrated, I went off to work and tried to keep my mind off my odd dilemma. This proved to be a difficult task. I kept playing out different scenarios in my head during the workday, but nothing made sense. The only logical, though somewhat illogical explanation I could come up with was that I was being harassed by a spirit, and I didn't want to give into that notion, but I was running out of ideas. I tried talking to my coworkers again in the hopes they would tell me it was nothing to worry about. Instead, I received the opposite. One of my coworkers told me to call the cops and have them look through my house for signs of a break-in. Another told me I should stay at a friend's house. Bill told me to abandon the house and run for the hills. He was only joking, but it didn't make me feel any better about the matter. Things took a turn for the bizarre when I arrived home that day. Opening the front door to the cottage, I stepped in and set my jacket down on the couch. Then I plopped down in an attempt to unwind. Immediately after sitting, I heard the bang again. It was clear as day. It was the same sound from the audio in the footage, but this time I was hearing it in person. I jumped up and looked straight ahead of the basement door. You could see it from the couch. It had been in my line of sight the entire time, though I hadn't been looking directly at it. I was fairly certain it hadn't moved. Still, the bang definitely came from that direction. Spooked but curious, I decided to check it out. I walked over cautiously and examined the door. There was no indication it had been slammed shut. The wood around the door was pristine, and the floor below the door had not been scraped. I opened it and trotted down the old creaky stairs to investigate the basement a third time. After reaching the bottom, I turned the light on. I expected to see nothing, just as I had before. While scanning the room left to right, I noticed nothing is mostly what I saw. After doing a double take, I realized something was amiss. Off in the center of the far wall was a door. This sent a chill up my spine. My basement had no doors. That I was sure of. I knew this before purchasing the place almost a year ago when I first took the grand tour. Also, I didn't see the door when I went down there that morning or the other day. It didn't make a lick of sense. I walked towards it bewildered. I wasn't sure of the door's origins, but I knew that it had to be the cause of the sounds I'd been hearing. There was no other explanation. As I approached the impossibility before me, I realized something that made my skin crawl. I recognized the wood, the design, and the deadbolt. It was the attic door. I didn't want to open it for fear of what might be lurking behind. Instead, I ran upstairs and checked to see if the attic door was still there, the actual one. It was indeed. And then I ran back downstairs into the basement, only to find the door down there had vanished. Had I merely imagined its presence? Thinking I had gone completely mad, I went back upstairs and sat down on the couch. My mind was running haywire, trying to comprehend things, but it eventually gave way to its own weariness. I ended up taking a short nap. That's when I had another weird dream. The dream was similar to the one I had before. I was sitting on the couch watching TV when I heard a scratching noise. The only difference was it was coming from the basement rather than the attic. It too progressed and turned into voracious knocking that I couldn't ignore. As such, I got up from the couch and went downstairs to put a stop to it. In my dream, the basement was empty, no mysterious door in sight. That and the knocking and scratching ceased upon my entrance. At my wit's end, I went back upstairs. The sound then returned with a vengeance, only this time it was coming from the attic again. I ran up there as fast as I could, but the noise stopped. I waited. Following the narrative of my previous dream, the deadbolt clicked, signaling the door had unlocked itself. Unlike my previous dream, however, the door opened up a bit, and a hand reached out from within, and that's when I woke up. I wrote the first dream off as a byproduct of an overstressed mind, but to have it reoccur, that wasn't ordinary, at least not for me. Between the door in my basement and the strange nightmares, I was a mess, both perplexed and frightened. I called my friend John. John is an eccentric fellow. He's the kind of guy who believes in UFOs, ghosts, conspiracy theories, the occult, and other things of that nature. Not only does he believe in them, but he studies them. He knows more about Roswell than I do about myself. Being a skeptic, I always thought the massive amount of information he retained was borderline useless. I changed my mind about that after seeing my attic door pop up in my basement. If anyone could help, or at least steer me in the right direction, it was him. I spoke with John for a couple of hours. He was ecstatic after hearing about my experience. He began rattling off all the different things he thought it might indicate. Some of his theories included a wormhole, a gateway to the other side, even a glitch. One of the many theories he had subscribed to is that the world we live in is a simulation. He also told me he couldn't be completely certain about what it was without seeing it for himself. Unfortunately, he lives too far away to just stop by and visit. Instead of leaving me empty-handed, John gave me some advice on what to do next. After telling him about the voice I captured and the dreams I've been having, he started leaning towards the ghost idea. He thought it might be trying to communicate with me. Because of this, he told me I should set up a voice recorder in the basement and ask the spirit some questions. I could play back the recording after and listen for the voice. John said I should do it in the attic as well. Though weary of his methods, I told him I'd try it out. After all, I couldn't just sit around and expect the situation to resolve itself. I didn't like the idea of going up in the attic by myself, but I needed to do something. After getting off the phone, I immediately put my plan into action. The basement would have to be first, as I was still apprehensive about going upstairs. I set up the app and put my phone on the basement floor. I proceeded to ask questions, leaving enough space in between for someone or something to answer. I asked for normal things like its name, its age, what it wanted. After roughly 5 minutes of interrogation, I stopped the recording and played it back. I must have listened to my own voice a million times, hoping for anything audible to present itself. To my dismay, I caught nothing of the sort. It seemed as though the attic would indeed have to be my next venture. I reluctantly climbed the stairs to the attic door. I looked at it for a few moments, took a deep breath, and unlocked the deadbolt. I opened the door and braced myself. There was nothing there, save for the previous owner's belongings. When I first purchased the house, I had to do a little bit of renovating, so to speak. The owner before me had no cable, electricity, or proper plumbing. On top of that, they left all of their stuff behind. I had most of it renovated, but left everything that was in the attic. I had no need for that space. I didn't want to put any more money into emptying that house than I had to. I pursued through the attic's wares for a bit, curious as to what I technically owned. Some of the interesting things that stood out to me were old postcards from Paris, a strange-looking dog collar, a book on witchcraft. The fear set in while going through the contents of my new collection. The angled ceiling, antiques, and large window overlooked my yard gave the place a dose of charm, but I still didn't like attics. I quickly hit the record button on the app and set my phone on the floor. I asked the same questions as before, but didn't leave much of a space in between as I really wanted to get the hell out of there. Before stopping the recording, I had a thought. Perhaps the spirit would respond if I asked it the same questions that I did in my sleep. I cleared my throat and I asked, "Where are you?" After asking the final question, I stopped the recording and played it back. It sounded almost identical to the one I recorded in the basement, complete with the lack of any answers. That is, until the very end. After the last question, I heard a familiar low whisper. "Behind you." After hearing this reply, I immediately turned around. There was nothing there. Despite this, I hightailed it downstairs. That eerie voice reinforced my phobia of attics and instilled in me an indescribable dread. I could no longer bear to be in that house by myself. I called John again and begged him to help me out. I told him I'd give him the gas money for the 8-hour round trip. He was reluctant at first, knowing he'd have to spend the night and call out from work the next morning. Curiosity got the best of him in the end. After much deliberation, he agreed to come over. I waited for John in my car. While sitting there, I couldn't help but examine my house. I began asking myself questions, like, is this really haunted? Do ghosts exist? And my favorite, is this what my life has come to? Though the questions were speculative and rhetorical, I pretty much knew the answers. As I gazed toward the house in disappointment, I noticed something out of the corner of my eye. It was a silhouette standing in the attic window. Holy shit, what the fuck? What do I do? Those were the only retorts that crossed my mind after seeing the shadowy figure. After a few moments of staring, the figure stepped back from the window completely out of sight. I sat and pondered about it for a few minutes after its departure. In a moment of bravery, I chose to go back in the house and up to the attic. Crazy, I know, but it's my house, and I needed to show that thing that I wasn't interested in playing its games, even if I was scared shitless. Besides, John would have my head if I didn't follow the damn thing. Feeling confident but still shaky, I ventured up into the attic. I swung the door open without hesitation and waltzed in like I owned the place. After all, I did. The attic was void of any ghostly figures, but it did harbor the faint scent of candle wax. Unsure of how to proceed, I started thinking out loud in a firm tone. "This isn't your house. I'm tired of your bullshit games, spirit. I demand you leave at once." I knew this wasn't going to work, but it was almost cathartic. I felt a hell of a lot better fighting back. I walked around the attic satisfied with my rant, thinking I'd actually conquered my fear. My smug demeanor wouldn't last more than a few minutes. Soon after I spoke, a gust of wind blew through the attic and hit me like a bus, nearly knocking me over. I knew it was the ghost doing. I tried to stand my ground, but I was pretty damn frightened. I watched as everything around me flew about, creating a tornado of mementos and keepsakes. I was about to retreat when I noticed something that hadn't budged an inch. It was the book on witchcraft I'd seen before. Upon noticing it, the wind inexplicably stopped and everything fell to the floor. I walked over to the book, curious as to why it remained stationary. As I did, it opened on its own. It was startling, but I somehow sensed no malice. I was coming around to the fact that the ghost might really be trying to communicate with me. The page the book landed on was a spell. The whole thing was in Latin, but from what I could make out, it had something to do with growing plants. Confused, I reached out to the ghost for help. What do you want me to do? After asking the question, the attic door slammed shut. I thought for a moment and gathered that it wanted me to recite the spell in the attic. I was still confused, but somehow calm. I felt as though I was helping the spirit in some way. Before I could read the book, my phone went off. It was a text from John. So sorry, I can't make it out there. My boss won't give me the day off tomorrow. I'm not sure my car will make it there and back. I desperately need new tires, and I won't be able to buy those until Friday. Give me a call back then, and I'll see what I can do. Good luck. Fuck. Even though I wasn't freaking out anymore, it was nice knowing that someone was on their way to my house, just in case things went sour. I didn't like it, but I was on my own. I accepted this and turned my attention back to the book. It was time to deliver the spell. I cleared my throat and began reciting the text in the book. I took Latin in college, and although I didn't retain all the information, I knew enough to make the proper pronunciations. Even still, I stumbled over my words during certain parts. Because of this, I had to restart a couple times. I wanted to get it right, especially if it was truly what the ghost wanted. After finishing the spell flawlessly for the most part, the attic door opened. I walked out with the book in hand, wondering if everything was over. When I reached the bottom step and turned around, it became quickly apparent that it wasn't. The basement door was wide open. I was in uncharted territory taking orders from Ghost, but I hoped I was following along all right. Seeing the basement door ajar convinced me that I probably needed to recite the spell down there as well. I wasn't sure why, but I felt like this was the spirit's will. As such, I obliged. I walked down into the basement with the book and turned the light on. A quick glance around revealed that I was alone and there was no door. I cleared my throat once again and began reciting the spell word for word. Honestly, I was a little excited. It felt like I was doing something productive about my ghost problem, and that it might actually help put it to rest. This time, I got it right on the first try. Upon finishing the spell in the basement, the house began to shake. When I say shake, I meant the whole house, basement and all. I never experienced an earthquake before, but it seemed like the only logical explanation for what was happening. It wasn't until I looked around the room during the madness that I realized it was the spell's doing. There, on the far wall, shaking with the rest of the house, was the attic door. I wonder if the spell somehow summoned it, simultaneously causing the house to wobble. The tremor eventually stopped, and I was left with the door, lending credence to my theory. I waited for a few minutes thinking the door would open, but it did not. It seemed that I would have to do that by myself. I wasn't too happy about it, but I'd come too far to back out now. I gathered my wits and walked over to the door. I proceeded to swing it open without fear, just as I had upstairs. Behind the door was a surprise. It was the attic upstairs. Everything was the same, only there was a man standing at the window. Hearing me open the door, he turned around. His eyes widened when he saw me. He ran so fast in my direction that I didn't even have enough time to take more than a single step back. He rushed through the doorway into the basement. He turned back around and slammed the attic door shut, making sure to lock the deadbolt. He turned to me, grabbed my shoulders, and looked me dead in the eye. I was baffled and scared for my life. Thank you so much. After expressing his thanks, the man let go of me and ran upstairs, but not before turning around and offering me some advice. Whatever you do, don't go in there. He gestured toward the attic door before bolting upstairs. I ran after him, wanting to ask him some questions, but when I got upstairs, it was already too late. My front door was open, and I could see him running down the dirt road towards town. And that was that. I've slept every night since then. No noises or paranormal issues whatsoever. I even set up cameras and voice recorders a few times to make sure I didn't catch a damn thing. I don't know what the hell happened. I'm sure of one thing. The man that came out from behind that attic door was no ghost. It was a living, breathing person.
Frameshift drive charging.
Wally for $2. Thank you, Wally. Much appreciated. Hope you're having a good time, man. Thank you very much. Very nice of you.
1. Engage.
That was a pretty good one. I like that one. There are a few times there I definitely got the chills. Definitely got the chills. Oh my god. That was pretty good. That was pretty good. It got me it's pretty good. All right, so let's see what time it is. It is about an hour and 39 minutes and 55 seconds. So there we go. It means it's 12:41 a.m. and that is that. Thank you, Cool Skull. Thank you very much. Gomer Kyle behind you. Don't do that to me, Gomer Kyle. I can see I'm looking at the monitor now. There's nobody behind me. I don't need to be freaked out any more than I am. Don't need to be freaked out any more than I am. Yeah, that was a pretty good one. Pretty scary right there. You know, when the thing was like behind you, that's when I was like, ooh, that's some spooky stuff. So there you go, folks. Never use a voice recorder when you sleep.
Frameshift drive charging.
Don't do it. It's bad news. Bad news. Oh, Gomer Kyle, you meant the story when you heard it. Oh yeah, that part really got me. That part really got me. I had the goosebumps when he was like, because then you don't know what's gonna happen next. Like, it's so scary. Cool Skull. I don't write them. I just read them. So I mean, the authors are really the people worth that thing, and I'm just some knucklehead running his mouth on the internet. Just, par for the course. Par for the course, everybody. A knucklehead on the internet, that I can do.
Fuel scooping.
So listen, that's going to do it for tonight. As I told you all before, Jesse Miller's streaming tonight right after this ends. So go ahead over and do a stream. Jesse, drop the link to your channel down here, Rutina. A modern Rod Serling. Well, thank you, sir. I really, you know what? I think that that title really belongs to Bill Madden over at Night Terrors. He's a little more like Rod Serling than I am. But I do appreciate it. That's a high compliment. Thank you very much. Anywho, I want to say thank you to Gomer Kyle, Ginger Viking Jesus, D. Will, Jeff McClure, and Wally for your generous super chats. They're much appreciated. Never expected, but always appreciated. Thank you so much. I want to thank you one and all for tuning in tonight. Really appreciate you being here. I want to thank you, Tina, my moderator, who's been with me forever. Thank you so much, Tina. And it was Tina's birthday. Today was your actual birthday, right? Was it, I don't know if it was midnight last night or it was today. I don't know. Anyway, my memory's pretty bad. You know why. Anywho. Anywho, everybody knows why I got a bad memory. Got to get to coast, Pete. I'll tell you what, Dennis Martin, I'd love to get on coast to coast. I sent a message to Linda Moulton Howell today, just telling her about my work on Antarctica, hoping she would check it out. I had reached out to her before, and her people contacted me, but she was like tied up at the time, didn't have any free time to do any live streams. Well, I don't know, with what's going on now, maybe I should try again. Maybe I should sit here. Maybe I could get Linda Moulton Howell on here. That would be awesome. I would love to talk to her. Anywho, that's neither here nor there. Like I said, thank you so much for being here tonight. This has been Nightcrawler, Tales of Terror, Volume 5. Tomorrow night will be 9 o'clock, 9 p.m. I'll be streaming at 9 p.m., probably about paranormal or the occult or UFOs. I'm not sure yet. And we'll talk about that subject matter. It'll be just like I used to do back on Saturday nights at 9 p.m. 2 or 3 years ago. It's going to be one of those shows. And I got an interview coming up next week. Very excited about that. So I'll start teasing that as we get a little bit closer. We're doing an interview next Saturday. Very excited. Got a lot of stuff on the working. So yes, tune in tomorrow at 9 for the show, and then we're going to do something different on Sunday. That's the new panel show that I got cooking up. So we'll see about that. So anywho, thank you for tuning in, everybody. Have a great night, and until next time, stay creeped out.
Fuel scooping. Scooping complete. Frameshift drive charging. 4, 3, 2, 1. Engage. Frameshift drive charging. Four, three, two, one. Engage. System scan complete. Frameshift drive charging. Four, three, two, one, engage. Fuel scooping. Fuel scoop disengaged. Frameshift drive charging. Four, three, two, one, engage. Fuel scooping. Fuel scoop disengaged. Orbital flight engaged.
flight control protocol initiated. Please submit a request prior to landing. Docking permission authorized. You may proceed to landing pad 07.
Landing gear deployed.
Docking procedure completed. Ship secured. Greetings, Commander.